It is Thursday, January 12th, 2023, and the Committee on Higher Education will come to order. This afternoon, we will have two presentations, one presentation from the Minnesota State System, as well as a presentation from the University of Minnesota. First on our agenda today is an overview presentation from the Minnesota State System. On my testifier list, I have Chancellor Devendra Malhotra, as well as George Soule. So please introduce yourselves and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Fateh, and members of the committee. My name is George Soule, and I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees for Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and a proud graduate of Minnesota State University Moorhead. We have several presenters here on behalf of Minnesota State, including our Chancellor, Devendra Malhotra, who's here, and Satasha Green-Steven, who's the Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, Bill Mackey, Vice Chancellor for Finance and Facilities, and we are fortunate to have two of our presidents here today, President Deidre Peasley from St. Paul College, just down the street, and President Annette Parker from South Central College, and finally, Dr. Jenna Chernega, the president of our four-year faculty organization, the IFO, is here to speak today. We're excited, Chair Fateh, to be this committee's partner in this important work. I'll give you a brief outline of our presentation today. I'll provide an overview on the system's governance and organization. Chancellor Malhotra will speak to the vision of Minnesota State and address the system's strategic direction. President Peasley will speak to our commitment on student support. President Parker will address our commitment to meeting community workforce needs. And Senior Vice Chancellor Green-Steven, Vice Chancellor Mackey, and Dr. Chernega will provide you with a brief overview of our biennial budget request. We understand that we'll be back before the committee to provide further detail about our request, so their testimony will be brief. Our system of 54 campuses is governed by a 15-member Board of Trustees appointed by the Governor and confirmed by the Senate. There's one trustee from each of the 8 congressional districts, and there are 4 at-large trustees and 3 student trustees. We're all volunteers who are committed to the success of our students, colleges and universities, and the communities that we serve. The Board of Trustees meets, I think, 8 months of the year and many meetings in between, and we have policy responsibility for system planning, academic programs, fiscal management, personnel, admissions requirements, tuition and fees, and rules and regulations. The system commissions a study every 4 years on the economic impact of the colleges and universities on our communities. We hire a firm called Parker Phillips economists to do this study, and they conclude that because of the state's and our students' investments in their educations, our campuses make an $8 billion economic impact in their communities, in part through the 36,000 alumni we graduate each year. This data is updated every 4 years. This is 2017 data, and we expect revised numbers in the coming weeks, which we will share for you. We host approximately 300,000 students annually, 59% in Greater Minnesota. 64,000 of our students are of color or indigenous students. 60,000 are low-income Pell-eligible students. There are over 40,000 first-generation students like me. There are 7,300 veterans, and almost 68,000 are 25 and older. Our 26 colleges and 7 universities serve as catalysts for social and economic vibrancy in the state of Minnesota. And we educate the entire talent pipeline. We confer approximately 36,000 degrees, certificates, and other credentials per year. We have over 4,000 academic programs, and many of those are available online. We form partnerships with employers across the state to ensure graduates entering the workforce are ready to contribute the first day on the job. And our students range from students who are seeking a certificate all the way up to applied doctoral programs. They're high school students or recent grads, students returning to complete a degree or start another one, or adults already in the workforce who need or want additional education or training. And we produce more graduates for jobs in critical high-demand fields such as healthcare and information technology than anyone else in the state. These are the percentages of people who enter the workforce who are graduated from our colleges and universities. I'll just highlight a couple of them. 89% of the people who enter the field of public safety are graduates of our colleges and universities. 60% of the nurses who enter the workforce are graduates of our colleges and universities, and you can see the other statistics here. So Minnesota State is an economic imperative for the state of Minnesota and will continue to be an important force in Minnesota's post-pandemic economy. We are focused on graduating more students with the skill set to move our economy forward. We're working with industry and other groups to make sure that we're supplying the workers that the state needs at this point in time. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair. Now I'll turn the presentation over to Chancellor Malhotra to discuss vision and commitments of Minnesota State. Thank you.
Thank you. Chancellor?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Fateh, Vice Chair Putnam. I'm Devendra Malhotra, Chancellor of Minnesota State. Congratulations on being named the chair of this committee, Senator Fateh. I look forward to the work that is ahead with you and all the other members of the committee. Senator Putnam, we look forward to continuing our partnership with you in your new role as vice chair of this committee. Senator Duckworth, looking forward to working closely with you as the minority lead on the committee. I'm looking forward to getting to know the new committee members and deepening and enhancing our partnership with each and every one of you. Thank you to Vice Chair Soul and to the entire Minnesota State Board of Trustees for their service to Minnesota State and the state of Minnesota. And I would be remiss if I didn't express my deep appreciation to our college and university presidents and all our dedicated faculty and staff for their commitment in serving our 300,000 students across Minnesota. I would like to take a moment to recognize the presidents with us in the audience today. We have Michael Barrett, president of Dakota County Technical College and Inver Hills Community College, Joe Mulford, president of Pine Technical and Community College, and Scott Olson, president of Winona State University. Also among the audience are Mark Grant from MSCF and Nicole Emerson, our state president of the MAPE Union. Mr. Chair, we spend a great deal of time making sure that we are strategic and effective in this fast-paced changing environment in which our students will have to compete in ways we can only imagine. Minnesota remains steadfast in our commitment to making good on our vision of providing exceptional educational opportunities to all Minnesotans. Mr. Chair, our mission is simple: rid higher education of its insular and elitist character and strengthen the communities and the region in which our colleges and universities are located. To achieve our mission, we are committed to enhance access to affordable, exceptional education and provide Minnesota the talent and workforce it needs. We not only have the stewardship of our students, but also we are stewards of the communities we serve. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Now you see on this slide, these are our students, the students we serve. I'm in awe of each and every one of our students for their persistence and perseverance in staying focused on their goals. In many cases, they must overcome significant barriers to reach their dreams. I'm inspired by their grit and determination to not only overcome these challenges, but get across the finish line and pursue productive careers, not only better their own future, but also the future of the communities in which they will live and work. Post-secondary education today is the most effective catalyst for upward social and economic mobility. I would like to say a few words about our system leadership and how the system office interacts with our colleges and universities. As Chancellor, I work closely with our systems leadership to ensure that we are meeting our commitments to Minnesota. On this slide, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, you can see our state university leaders, and the following two slides will introduce you to our college presidents. I'm fortunate to have strong partners in our presidents and campus leaders. We all collectively take a lot of pride in taking ownership of the learning of all our students, no matter where they are enrolled. In the system office, we are able to manage services for most effective cost efficiency across the campuses. For example, some of those services which we have collectivized include information technology, legal services, payroll and HR transactions, and financial oversight, to name a few. These areas are collectively managed at the system level, thereby not only bringing cost effectiveness, but also increasing the effectiveness of their operations. Our presidents regularly meet with our student groups and bargaining units on campuses. I personally meet with our student organizations and collective bargaining units to work on pressing issues together in a joint manner throughout the year. The feedback and input from these sessions informs our strategic positioning and our operations in support of our students and our colleges and universities. While great work is going on in our colleges and universities, I fully recognize we need to do more. When I became chancellor, I committed to aggressive listening tours driving across the state to your communities to listen to regularly to what legislators, business leaders, community leaders, members of the K-12 sector, and nonprofits had to say about the partnerships our system or our campuses have forged with them. They shared with me what our campuses mean to them and what their expectations are of Minnesota State. They also were not shy in telling me that they stand ready to deepen and enhance their partnership with us. It is very clear that the relationship with our communities and campuses is integral to the success of Minnesota, both economic and social. Mr. Chair, just like we successfully navigated the challenges of the pandemic, I want to assure you that we are up to the challenges of addressing Minnesota's workforce needs in your communities. Our budget is laser-focused on those challenges. We are the workforce engine of the state, 36,000 graduates a year, 18 to 20,000 from our career and technical education programs in our two-year colleges. Again, we know as large as this size and scope of this impact seems to be, we need to do more. I believe Minnesota State is the best workforce development tool that state has, and we take that obligation very, very seriously. In June 2019, our board set the critical goal that by 2030, Minnesota State will eliminate the educational equity gaps at every Minnesota State college and university. Equity 2030 will require both intentional systems and culture change and innovation, as well as advocacy and leadership with partners and stakeholders across the state to accomplish this goal of Equity 2030, including legislative support. Mr. Chair, more students are struggling and balancing their educational needs with keeping part-time jobs as well as with childcare needs and mental health and other basic needs. Minnesota State has 60,600 students from low-income families and 64,600 students of color or those of Native origin. These students are economically vulnerable and are dropping out in larger numbers as their ability to pursue their education is severely impaired because of rising inflation and falling real income. It is imperative that we provide these students the necessary support to these economically vulnerable students, both inside and outside the classroom, and that, in a nutshell, is the underlying message of our request. Mr. Chair, with your permission, I would now like to turn to President Deidre Peasley from St. Paul College to talk about our commitment to Equity 2030 and to the students we serve. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you, Chancellor Moltra, as well as Vice Chair. I would like to first ask committee members, are there any questions for the Vice Chair or Chancellor? Senator Putnam, or Vice Chair Putnam.
Thank you so much for being here, Chancellor Malhotra, and your tremendous leadership of the Minn State system. As you, I think, rightfully acknowledge, the state system is one of the premier, if not most essential, mechanisms for social mobility in the state of Minnesota. Along those lines, with the various initiatives that you're going to be discussing and proposing for this session, are there particular issues or particular areas that you think should be treated sort of independent of the larger discussion of the Minn State budget that you think are of enough of a priority or an imperative that we should do them sooner than later?
Senator Putnam, Vice Chair
Chancellor.
Putnam, members of the committee, our biennial budget request has three big buckets. One is for student support and equity. Other is resources to stabilize our colleges and universities as we come out of the pandemic and position ourselves for the future. And third is we are asking for $100 million in workforce development. And we are also committing to the fact that we will match every dollar of those $100 million. So there would be a $200 million investment in workforce development. And I think if I have to pick one to go early, this is a tough choice for me because all three represent very strong priorities for us. But if I have to pick one to go early, it would be workforce development, just because of the size and scope of the agenda underlying that a particular area and the additional lead time we would need to engage our business and industry partners and setting up the needed infrastructure to mount that effort.
Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Chancellor Malhotra. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Senator Kupek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, if I could, I'd just like to compliment, first of all, Mr. Soul for, first of all, Minnesota State University Moorhead graduate, and I'd also like to compliment you, too, on the generous scholarships that you've set up for our American Indian community in this state. I think that you're a great example for philanthropy in the state towards students.
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome. I do have a lot of concerns about our four-year schools, our Minnesota state system. And I know it's a national trend where we've seen declining enrollment. A lot of the flagship universities seem like they're doing okay in enrollment, but around the country, this is a problem. Some of it I realize is the economy. There are a lot of jobs right now, and some people are thinking that this education is not maybe the best value. And some of that is quite frankly on on us, because we have never funded properly to the correct levels these institutions that we have made commitments to in the past that we were going to. And I'm afraid that at some of these schools, the tuition has just gotten a little too high, and that some people are thinking maybe this isn't the best value, because especially the Minnesota State University system has been that gateway for first-generation college students and that mobility upward. It has been a great trend. So those are things I'd like to work on. In terms of, things like even the Equity 2030, I feel like what I have at least seen from the example of Minnesota State University Moorhead in my own little bubble world is that seems to be a very short-sightedness on where that institution is headed. And I'm not sure if that's across all of the schools in the system, but it seems like they're going for very short-term budget goals and losing sight of where maybe the institution needs to be going to serve that next generation of students, to have that those workers that we need to move this economy forward. And even around the Equity 2030, we had unfortunately some retrenchment, which means we cut faculty at Moorhead. And a lot of the faculty that got cut were BIPOC faculty because they were newer. And when we talk about people coming in and seeing those examples of people of color who want to see those examples, when you have that person up in front of the classroom leading that class, that alone is an example of how we can get ahead. And unfortunately, those were a lot of the people that lost their jobs because they were newer and on that faculty roster got cut. So I think those are all concerns we need to look at. So I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but I just have a lot of concerns and how we can, I guess, partner together to move this system forward, which is near and dear to my heart, and I think an important part of this state, how we can work together. I'll be looking forward to doing that.
Chair Fateh, Senator Kupek.
Thank you, Senator. Chancellor Malhotra.
My apologies. Thank you, Chair Fateh. Senator Kupek, you point out to a very important trend. Even though it's a national trend, it is little comfort when we experience enrollment declines. And it's a crucial issue for both our colleges and universities. And it directly impacts our campus operations and their bottom line. And when that happens, our presidents and our campus leaders are in a very difficult situation, and they have to make very tough and often decisions which we need to make sure that we can deal with some of the short-term critical issues, and at the same time, through reallocations, provide sufficient funding to appropriately position the universities and our colleges for the future. Enrollment is an important issue, and particularly we talked a lot about workforce development. If our enrollment are declining and we don't reverse that trend, then that directly impacts the workforce development talent pipeline too. So the budget you will consider is anchored in this challenge we face, and we have tried to build support and structures for our students to enhance access and to address the affordability issue head on, especially in crucial areas, and you will find that in various ways in which we will incentivize to enhance access and bring in more students, but also at the same time invest in critical infrastructure to provide the needed support to our students, both inside and outside the classroom, to get them across the finish line. Minnesota State is at a crucial point, and that's why we need your partnership. And I'm glad you're offering your partnership. This is music to our ears. And in thinking through strategies that will bring our students back and also enhance access to those segments of our population which historically have had very low participation rates in post-secondary education, and then also make sure that our students are poised for success. And that goes for all our students. And I think that itself will have a very positive impact on our enrollment. So Equity 2030, to me, is also an enrollment strategy. If we close the educational equity gaps, the more students will persist and stay, and that will raise our enrollment rates too.
Thank you, Chancellor Malhotra. Senator Kupek? Thank you. Are there any other questions from committee members? Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chair Fateh.
Thank you. Next, we have on our list President Deidre Peasley from St. Paul College, as well as President Annette Parker from South Central College. So please introduce yourselves and proceed with your testimony.
Chair Fateh, members of the committee, I am Deidre Peasley, President of St. Paul College. Established in 1910, St. Paul College has a long history of assuring access to education. Originally created to provide vocational training to grade school age boys to bridge the gap of skilled laborers, the institution became St. Paul Technical and Vocational Institute in 1966 and also started training girls. In 1989, we became St. Paul Technical College before adding to our mission and changing our name in 2002 to what it is today, St. Paul College, a community and technical college. Grounded in equity and inclusion, St. Paul College educates and empowers students to lead purposeful lives and discover rewarding careers. Today, the college offers 54 associate degree programs, including the Associate of Arts degree and 74 career, certificate, and diploma programs, and enrolls almost 15,000 students annually in both credit and non-credit courses. St. Paul College is the most diverse institution in Minnesota State, serving 65% students of color. In addition, 61% of our students are first-generation college students and 45% are Pell eligible. St. Paul College plays a critical role in training our current and future workforce by preparing skilled professionals for in-demand sectors, particularly healthcare professions such as respiratory therapists and medical lab technologists. We have over 50 programs that students can complete in less than 1 year to meet the immediate hiring demands of our Minnesota employers. There is no doubt that our programs and graduates contribute to the health and vitality of our state. When I started my career in higher education over 30 years ago, the conversation about student support centered on what I would call traditional student services, things like admissions, advising, and activities. Today, when we talk about student support, we still provide those traditional services, but now our colleges and universities have had to expand our services and philosophies to address larger societal issues by providing things like food shelves, licensed
President-
psychologists.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you mind moving the microphone a
Oh,
little
sure.
bit closer?
Is that
Thank you.
better?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
So we have had to expand our offerings and our philosophies to include larger societal issues, providing things like food shelves, licensed psychologists, housing assistance, and emergency grants. We didn't set out to provide what some would identify as social services, but we are providing what our students need. Last spring, we updated our mission, vision, and values to make the commitment to our students clear. Our first value is intentionally. We believe students are the heart of our work. With compassion and dedication, we collaborate to create an inclusive and supportive learning environment to meet student needs, interests, and goals. When all students have access to resources and support, they are empowered to achieve success. St. Paul College is proud to be thought of as a student-ready college, an institution that works every day to welcome students as they are and to support them by addressing all of the barriers that they experience, which may prevent them from achieving their educational goals. St. Paul College is an open access institution, which means all learners can apply and all are admitted. Every student that walks through our doors has different needs and experience barriers to attending college and completing their program. For example, in a 2019 survey conducted by the Hope Center for St. Paul College, 41% of the respondents experienced food insecurity in the prior 30 days. 57% of respondents experienced housing insecurity in the previous year. 19% of the respondents experienced homelessness in the previous year. These are our students. 67% of the students at St. Paul College experienced one of these forms of basic needs insecurity in the past year. As a result of this data and other evidence, we opened a food pantry that is open for our entire community. The food pantry also provides household goods, hygienic products, and other non-perishable goods. It operates on a shopper-first model. Shoppers can visit as many times as they need and take as much or as little as they need. When a student is hungry or a student's child is hungry, it is hard to focus on college coursework. Being a diverse institution means embracing all types of student differences. Just this spring, we became a Beyond the Yellow Ribbon institution because of our commitment to veterans and their families. The past few years have also shed light on the urgent and growing need around students' mental health. In addition to strengthening our mental health staffing and community partnerships, St. Paul College has set the audacious goal of ensuring that every employee is a certified mental health first aid responder. This certification, in combination with our enhanced communication protocols, ensures that we have a strong support system in place to proactively identify and support students in crisis. Basic needs and mental health support are not the only needs our students have. Over the past several years, we've been able to leverage our HERF funding to provide emergency aid for our students. This funding and aid has made the difference to thousands of students. One student said, "Student emergency funds have helped almost every semester, and I would have dropped out without them." Another student remarked, "I was in a really bad spot financially, and I needed help paying for my classes and bills. The student emergency funds took that heavy burden off my shoulders." Finally, another student summed up the impact of the support with the following: "They literally kept me afloat. I don't know what I would have done without student aid assistance this semester." As you can see, this support can make the difference between our students completing their programs or having to withdraw. Each day, we embrace our role of educating students because we know that through the new skills learned at St. Paul College, our graduates are able to enter the middle class with family-sustaining wage jobs. When we invest in our students, we are investing in entire families and all of society. It truly has a multiplier effect. It helps us build a stronger future for the state of Minnesota. At St. Paul College, our mission and vision are to educate, to help students transform their lives and their communities. We know, though, that without comprehensive support systems for our students, some will never enroll, and many will not complete their educational programs. We truly appreciate your support in helping us bring our vision to fruition.
Thank you, President Peasley. President Parker?
Thank you, Chair Fatah and members of the committee. I am South Central College President Annette Parker, and I'm pleased to have in attendance with me Nicole Emerson, our Assistant Director of Student Life, who also serves as Chair of MAPE. Also with me is Jess Dewar, who is our North Mankato Senate Student President, and Chris Richter, who is also our Faribault Student Senate President. And by the way, Chris is a high school student. I'm here to speak to you on behalf of South Central College and many Minnesota State institutions dedicated to working with our business community to meet the workforce needs of the future. It truly is a partnership. We provide the workforce our businesses need, and our businesses provide employment opportunities for our graduates. As a community and technical college, South Central College provides programs in tune with industry needs and evolves programs to meet changing industry needs. Several years ago, in response to industry needs, we established a new welding program. We also transitioned our carpentry program in Faribault from 2 years to 1 year to ensure that graduates could get into the field faster. We offer a variety of career-ready programs that range from a one-semester certificate to a full 2-year degree. Some programs offer industry-recognized credentials that can be earned simultaneously while students earn their degree. Many of our career-ready programs also offer apprenticeships and other work-based experiential opportunities. In 2015, SCC received a U.S. Department of Labor grant to work with other Minnesota State institutions, creating the Work, Learn, and Earn program, which provides apprenticeships and dual training opportunities for our state advanced manufacturing students. Since then, apprenticeships and dual training have expanded to other programs at the college. To help fund dual training opportunities, employers in our region were awarded nearly $2 million in DEED pipeline grants over the past 5 years. In addition to our credit-based programs, we also offer short-term training through our Customized Workforce Education Division, which serves approximately 12,000 individuals annually. Some start right out of high school, earning a credential, going to work, and possibly earning a degree later on. Others are seasoned professionals who want to update their skills. Our Customized Workforce Education Division also works with businesses to upskill their employees and provide customized solutions specific to their operations. Some employers receive funding for this type of training through DEED Minnesota Job Skills Partnership Grants. This program has been tremendously helpful for our industry partners, with 22 employers receiving more than $3.2 million in grants over the past 10 years. SCC is committed to educating students whose career aspirations require a 4-year degree by enabling them to complete the first 2 years of their bachelor's degree at SCC before transferring to a 4-year institution. Jess Dewar, who I introduced earlier, is pursuing her pre-social work transfer pathway degree, and I believe Jess is planning to transfer to Minnesota State Mankato. As much as we value our industry partners, we are also tremendously grateful to our education partners, including K-12 and adult education. From career exploration to ensuring a smooth transition to college, these partnerships are critical. SCC has many PSEO students taking college-level courses in their high school and at our campuses. By starting college early, they are able to get into the workforce sooner. PSEO students also get to experience early what it means to be a college student. Some are actively involved in student activities. I mentioned earlier that our Student Senate President, Chris, who is behind me here, is actually a PSEO student from Faribault Public Schools, Chris? We have many unique collaborations with high schools. Our mechatronics program faculty provide training and support to high school instructors so that they can teach courses at their high schools for college credit through a National Science Foundation grant. We started our high school to college to career, what we call H2C at South Central College. It's a program at Faribault High School that we started in 2021. We developed this partnership with the local school district, the Faribault Chamber of Commerce, Allina Clinic, Mayo Clinic, and other area healthcare providers to create a diverse workforce of the future. Through H2C, students can complete their high school diploma, receive industry certifications, and start their college program simultaneously. We started with health sciences with a total of 128 students participating so far. In a few weeks, we're starting our second H2C program in manufacturing engineering and construction, and all of the spots are filled. Another creative program to meet workforce needs is what I'm really proud of, called Uniquely Abled, which we piloted this last summer to train young adults with high-functioning autism to become CNC operators. We know that providing the workforce of the future takes innovative solutions like this. I've talked a lot about what we do to meet the workforce needs of employers, but as I said before, it is truly a partnership, and our employers contribute to our college in a major way. To enhance our advisory committees for technical and professional programs, we recently implemented a new model called BUILT. It stands for Business and Industry Leadership Teams. BUILT supports an employer-led model that leaders from industry and SCC programs working together look at and discuss the skill sets that employees will need several years from now so we can start planning for the future of our programs. Our employers also contribute to our programs by donating funds and equipment. Remember I told you all about our welding program. Well, 6 industry partners joined together to contribute $200,000 toward the state-of-the-art welding lab on our North Mankato campus. Over the past 2 years, employers have donated more than $750,000 to classroom upgrades in support of our 2017 capital bonding. The state's Leverage Equipment Program has allowed us to do more with equipment donated by our industry partners. SCC has received hundreds of thousands of matching dollars through this fund to purchase new equipment for our students. We know that our employers are willing to support matching fund initiatives like this, which is why we are excited that the Workforce and Economic Development Department at the Minnesota State's budget, within the Minnesota State's budget request, focuses on matching funds. The request for matching funds to upgrade our equipment and learning environments is essential to ensuring our students are gaining the hands-on skills using tools and spaces that mirror our industry partners. The request for matching funds to increase workforce development scholarships is promising. To date, 203 SEC students have received workforce development scholarships totaling nearly $700,000. With this new funding, matched by employers, we will be able to help more students be successful. And the request for matching funds to develop and expand industry sector programming will fuel our industry partnership efforts. This is one other group of partners that we didn't do. There's one other group of partners that we couldn't do any of this without. So I want to say thank you to all of you who have supported the colleges and the Minnesota State system. Together, we are ensuring the next generation is a skilled workforce for Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you, President Parker. And I want to say first, thank you to the students who came in today to participate. So thank you all so much. I appreciated the presentation that you both gave. And it got me to think about my own experience. I think President Peasley, you mentioned that community colleges are open access institutions, right? And myself, I'm a product of a community college. I wasn't a very good high school student. I barely graduated. So it was a community college that helped me go through that associate's degree process, get transferred to get a 4-year degree, and eventually my master's. So you said all that apply are welcome, and I'm grateful for that myself. So thank you both so much. Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Senator Umu Verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Presidents. And I'm just wondering how you're personally implementing the Equity 2030 program and what barriers still remain, particularly those structural barriers, to ensure that we meet those goals.
I'll start out. At South Central College, Equity 2030 is a framework for the entire system. And as we looked at our strategic plan and the work that we do, we made sure that our KPIs aligned with our strategic goals are all measuring Equity 2030, as well as the goals and objectives. They're aligned, they're matched, they're hand in glove. So let me talk a little bit about what we're doing, very, very similar to what President Peasley talked about. In 2017, South Central College joined a national consortium of community colleges called Achieving the Dream. Achieving the Dream is a national organization of around 300 colleges, community colleges now, that focus on closing equity gaps based on a culture of evidence. So you have to have data and a strong research arm that's tracking your data. We're doing things like mental health counseling, food insecurity, clothing insecurity, working with all our regional nonprofits, changing our whole advising and counseling model so that we're what I call wrapping our arms around our students. And we applied for Leader College status last February, which you have to prove through your data that you're being successful, you're moving the dial. I'm proud to tell you I used 3 measures, but there's several more. And sometimes my research arm always says, Dr. Parker, make sure you get the number just right. I think I have these 3 right. our African-American men in math, their success rate in gateway courses increased 150% last year. Our Hispanic students in English increased 83% last year. Our veterans increased 25%, and our female women percent went up 20%. And so we know that we're moving the dial. We were able to do some of this with the federal money from the stimulus, or I'm sorry, not from the stimulus, but from the pandemic. But we need additional support, and this request is exactly what we need to continue those services that we know are making a difference, closing the equity gap, and making sure that our communities have the workforce that they need for the future.
Thank you so much for the
Thank you, President.
question, Senator Chair Fateh. Thank you. I will just add on to what President Parker said, that St. Paul College has committed to become an anti-racist and trauma-informed institution. We made that commitment in the summer of 2019, and it is the foundation for our entire strategic plan and everything that we do at St. Paul College. And so part of that is what I mentioned, which is that all of our employees will be trained as mental health first aid responders. Again, not that they're diagnosing or treating our students, that's not the intent. It is really that if a student is in, or honestly, if anybody that they encounter, another employee is in mental distress, that they are able to help that person and get them the resources that they need. The other thing that I will mention about our approach to Equity 2030 within the system is that we are working on embedding that within our classroom practices. We have something called Equity by Design, which our goal at St. Paul College is to have every single faculty member engaged in the Equity by Design work, which is an opportunity to look at the data for their individual courses, look at who is being successful, who is not being successful, and actually develop a plan for implementation within their course for a semester, and then look at the results of that. We know that the greatest impact that we can have is within the classroom. Those faculty are the ones that see those students every single day. And so this is just a part of who we are as an institution to make sure that we are removing the barriers that our students have.
Thank you, President Peasley. Senator Umuver-Bayton.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from our members? Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we have Bill Mackey, Vice Chancellor of Finance and Facilities. Satasha Green-Steven, Senior Vice Chancellor of Academic and Student Affairs, as well as Jenna Chernega, Interfaculty Organization President. And we need to wrap up by 4 p.m. if possible, testifiers, just a heads up, but please introduce yourselves and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fateh, members of the committee. For the record, I am Bill Mackey, Vice Chancellor for Finance and Facilities. Before we provide a brief overview of our budget request, I want to spend a moment talking about the process we went through in putting together this request. An extensive amount of input and feedback was received and considered from both our internal and our external stakeholders. Throughout fall semester, consultation occurred across our system. Multiple budget-specific conversations with the chancellor and or members of his leadership team happened with the statewide college and university student associations and statewide bargaining units. This consultation was supported and complemented by local campus discussions led by presidents with their students, faculty, staff, and campus leadership. Informed by these consultation sessions and campus discussions, the presidents reviewed and provided feedback on the programmatic aspects of our proposed biennial budget request. In addition, we started this process during the month of September. The chancellor, the board of trustees chair, and the chairs of the academic and student affairs, audit, and finance and facilities committees participated in a series of listening sessions held across the state, as denoted on the map on the slide. A total of 12 sessions were held on campuses in our system. More than 550 students, faculty, staff, business and community leaders, including 14 legislators, attended these listening sessions. Participants provided valuable insights and specific ideas related to our biennial budget request. As you heard from Chancellor Malhotra, Minnesota State ensures access to affordable and exceptional education to all Minnesotans so they can become the talent Minnesota needs. This budget requests three main priorities that he also mentioned reflect what our internal and external stakeholders, students, communities, expect for Minnesota State's colleges and universities. And then we've categorized these into three priorities: student support, workforce and economic development, and what we're referring to as Minnesota State stabilization, which is operating support primarily for our colleges and universities. We won't get into too much detail on our budget request because we understand we'll be back in front of the committee to do a deeper dive in the future, but we'll spend a few minutes providing an overview of these three areas. Our colleges and universities rely on state appropriation, base state appropriation, to cover a significant portion of their operating budgets. An increase in state appropriation is needed for colleges and universities to continue to provide an education, an exceptional education, and to ensure there are adequate programs and services to serve our students across our 54 campuses. Without an increase in general fund revenues, campuses eventually, and have been have to reduce the breadth of academic programs and student services that are available to students at the same time when these demands are increasing. The portion of this request includes an increase of just over 6% for base appropriation for our colleges and universities, with a 3% increase for some portions of centrally performed services, primarily in the area of enterprise technology. Some of these functions have not received inflationary funds for several years. Mr. Chair, members, with your permission, I'd now like to turn over the presentation to Senior Vice Chancellor Stephen to talk about the student support and workforce portions of our request.
Thank you. Ms. Green-Steven.
Good afternoon, Chair Fateh and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Dr. Satasha Green-Steven, Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs for Minnesota State College and University System. I'm going to talk a little bit about our FY 2024 budget request around our student supports. A big part of student success is having those student supports inside and outside of the classroom. So we're proposing $125 million to support our student affordability and tuition freeze, $50 million in FY 2024 and $75 million in FY 2025. As an ongoing and persistent theme in our listening sessions from our student organizations, students, it was affordability, the cost of attendance. It's a key factor in students' decision-making about a college or university education. So a tuition freeze would support students in their education and would be consistent with past legislated limitations on undergraduate tuition and would be in lieu of a 3.5% increase each year, not only supporting our current students, but future students who may not be able to afford or have the capability to attend now have an opportunity to access higher education. This would save our students $25 million in FY 2024 and $50 million in FY 2025. When we look at national data, it also shows that students have concern about education costs. There was a recent study done by the Gates Foundation, and it found, one, that students had concerns about college costs, but two, they had a question about the value of post-secondary education. And many are worried about disrupting their livelihoods to attend colleges and universities. Because of the cost of attendance, it's beyond just tuition. There are costs of course materials. This can be an added investment for students on top of tuition that they need to pay. So a part of our budget request, we're expanding our open educational resources, those Z degrees, those zero-cost degrees, so students can complete a degree at no cost, as well as supporting those materials that go along with the course at no cost. Second, we're proposing $26 million in support of student support services. Even prior to the pandemic, student support services and basic needs supports had been a focus of our work. The pandemic only amplified the importance for students. The funding would support Minnesota State colleges and universities in investing in those supports. This is not an exhaustive list, but looking at advisors, those transfer specialists, social workers, mental health support staff, basic need coordinators, in ways that make sense for the community and in ways that address their highest needs. It also would provide for ongoing student support for our basic needs connection hubs, which provides that round-the-clock access for our students. It would expand on our mental health supports, which is critical to growing the need, and to provide similar 24/7 resources to expand the training we've rolled out for our faculty and staff to recognize and provide initial response to students' mental health needs, again, supporting students inside and outside of the classroom. Third, we're proposing $12 million in transfer scholarships. Supporting affordability for students who make the transition from a Minnesota State 2-year college to a Minnesota State 4-year college will support in the persistence and completion of our students who attend our colleges and universities and transfer to our universities. Paired with our ongoing work on transfer pathways and improving the transfer experience for students, this will help sustain and expand the Minnesota State College and University pipeline and support in enrollment. So we're proposing funding to 2 transfer scholarship programs. Note these are last dollar in scholarships to support and transfer. And lastly, we're proposing $10 million to support emergency grants. Additional funding for emergency grants prior to the pandemic, the demand for emergency support often exceeded the available funding. Proposed funding would provide for crucial support where students' vulnerabilities can delay or derail academic and career progress, as well as help support addressing needs that represent barriers to students achieving their educational goals. These emergency grants would be locally customized, promptly awarded funds to help with unforeseen emergencies. Entire process would be available on a mobile app that is administratively streamlined, easy to use, and focused on the need and equity in mind in decision-making. Additionally, the ease of application and speed of disbursement to help support students in crisis is an important factor in getting students the supports they need when they need it. We also, as it relates to workforce development for FY 2024-25 budget requests, Minnesota State request for workforce and economic development is focused on the quality and competitiveness of our programs and meeting our employer workforce needs in high-demand areas and occupations. We're proposing $100 million to support workforce economic development, $50 million in FY 2024, and $50 million in FY 2025. It's important to note that all requested state funds would be matched one-to-one with state in kind and cash. From this fall's listening sessions and from what we're hearing from employers across the state, it's clear that major investments in equipment, student supports and programming at Minnesota State's 26 colleges and 7 universities in multiple areas like CTE, career technical and education, STEM, health and public safety programs need to be made to provide students with optimal learning experiences that prepare them for employment in the current and emerging workplace. Factors to consider are highly skilled workforce is needed to keep the state competitive. The demographic trends indicate aging workforce, stagnant population for the state over the long term. Technology is changing the workplace across all sectors. Current jobs are evolving, creating the need for employees with high technical skills. Skill levels of the current workforce need to upgrade to new technologies. And employer engagement is critical to build successful programs and majors that align to business and industry needs. So first, we're proposing $49 million to upgrade college and university equipment and learning environments. The funding would be focused on new technologies, such as simulation equipment in our healthcare programs and introducing students to artificial intelligence technologies, as well as lab capacity for college and university students in our STEM fields. Our programs must not only offer students access to these new technologies for their future career prospects, but it's essential for Minnesota State to stay competitive with other education providers across the state borders and private organizations. Students must be trained on equipment that is used in the workforce to maximize transferability and to provide them with the opportunity to develop skills needed in the workplace. Funding is needed to upgrade current learning spaces and to support new program initiatives. Investments in simulation equipment can enhance the learning and help address staffing concerns. Second, we're proposing $25 million to grow our highly successful Workforce Development Scholarship Program. Additional funding for our Workforce Development Scholarship will encourage enrollment into high-demand fields, offering more affordable education to more students in the existing fields of healthcare, IT, agriculture, transportation, manufacturing, and early childhood education, as well as the 3 new high-demand fields for students in construction, public safety, and education. The program will also expand availability to university students, which is an area where we want to expand in workforce development, making it easier for state university students to affordability to complete their 4-year degrees. Extending the scholarships for short-term stackable credentials from our non-credit to our credit certificates will allow our adult workers to keep their skills up to date by adding professional, continuing education, as well as credit for prior learning fees as for scholarship funds, allowing individuals who often lack the resources to quickly acquire the needed skills to access the jobs that pay a livable wage. Lastly, we're proposing $25 million to develop and expand industry sector programming, meaningful business and industry engagement in key industry sector programs funding. Our existing 8 centers of excellence have made tremendous impact on our partners with business and industry and improving the quality of our education through our direct guidance on programming and helping many young people experience those intensive career explorations like our Scrubs campus sponsored by our Healthcare Center of Excellence. By supporting industry sector programming, adding 2 new centers of excellence in construction and public safety, Minnesota State will be more responsive to the emerging and multidisciplinary skills for our future careers and offering students greater access to internships, those short-term certificates, those high school to college CTE pathways, and other applied learning opportunities to support our students to success. And lastly, these scholarships will help provide resources for program upgrades and to add new programming in emerging fields. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Jenna Chernega.
Thank you, Dr. Green-Steven. Dr. Chernega, please try to wrap it up within a couple minutes so that we can make time for the U of M system also.
Absolutely. I'll
Thank you
keep
so
my
much.
comments as short as possible.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Chair
you.
Fateh, members of the committee, thank you for having me. My name is Jenna Chernega. I'm the president of the Interfaculty Organization, or IFO. We represent teaching faculty, coaches, counselors, and librarians at the 7 state universities within the Min-State system. I'm also a professor of sociology from Winona State University. However, I'm here today to represent a much larger coalition of bargaining units that work within Min-State. You've heard about the Chancellor's Equity 2030 goal, and I'm here to attest that my colleagues across bargaining units are in strong support of Equity 2030 and therefore of the System Office budget request that includes resources necessary to achieving that lofty goal. Included in the slide deck and up on screen right now is a copy of a letter of support signed by students, faculty, and staff. Each of these organizations understand the importance of the budget request to their constituency. When Chancellor Malhotra began in 2015, the relationship between the system office and the bargaining units was not positive. To his deep credit, Chancellor Malhotra mended those relationships and set out for the system a vision that could unite all of us in a common goal, the Equity 2030 project. The moonshot goal of closing all of the achievement gaps by 2030 was the kind of big vision necessary to get everyone on board and has reinvigorated our campuses, including our faculty and staff, around a shared purpose. However, closing those equity gaps is not easy. If it were, we would have done it long ago. And it won't be cheap. Providing the kinds of educational tools that are needed for our most marginalized students requires resources. And as Chancellor Malhotra looks forward to his well-deserved retirement, we see the system office budget request as an important down payment that will ensure his successor and the system have what we need to complete that vision. Equity 2030 is not just an important project for the Minnesota state system. It is indeed critical for the entire state of Minnesota. You all sit on other committees where you may be hearing about the need for more nurses, a more diverse police force, highly educated workers in every sector of our economy. more teachers, more cultural competence for everyone in the state. There is no way to achieve those goals for the state of Minnesota without MnState. Quite frankly, we are the largest provider of higher education in the state of Minnesota. We educate more students of color every year than the University of Minnesota has students. There is not a part of the state that is not touched by MnState. And if we have hope of creating a more equitable, more prosperous citizenry, any plan needs to include a well-resourced MnState system. Equity 2030 is the right thing to do for our students, for our campuses, but it is also the critically right thing to do for the state of Minnesota. I look forward to speaking with you more next week about the IFO and our work throughout session, about how we can work together to ensure that every Minnesotan has access to a world-class education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chernega. We're going to skip over the questions for now, just to make time for the next presenters, and then if we have time, we'll ask towards the end if that's okay with you all as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a presentation from the University of Minnesota system, and I believe we'll first begin with President Gable. So please introduce yourself and proceed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Fateh, Ranking Member Duckworth, and Vice Chair Pittman, members of the committee, Committee Administrator Parmakar, and committee staff. My name is Joan Gable, and I have the great honor of serving as the president of the University of Minnesota. I'd also like to recognize and welcome any of the university's Board of Regents members who are joining us here or remotely. It's a great pleasure to be with you all this afternoon and to have a chance to talk about what's going on at the University of Minnesota and our hopes and aspirations for the future. Since becoming the president of the university, now in my 4th year, which I find sort of surprising because time stopped in the middle for a couple of years of that time during the pandemic, we have had the chance nonetheless to engage with you, this committee, and of course your counterparts in the House, and other legislative colleagues were critically important in the development of our strategic plan, Impact 2025, and of course have been partners in understanding how to best serve the communities that you represent and other communities across the state. And it's a regular occurrence where we hear from your constituents and others about how the university has played a role in the lives of the members of the state of Minnesota that we serve, in your own lives. I know many of you are alums, or have family members who are, and that's one of our great sources of pride, as you might imagine. We value your support and input and the many ways we're working together to advance the lives of our students and citizens, but also to think about our longstanding partnership with the legislature. I'm only the 17th president to serve in a history that now exceeds 170 years, and that's really quite remarkable, particularly in comparison to other institutions like ours where that kind of longevity is just not visible, and you can see it in the effects of how the university is governed. Of course, in our case, we're governed by a 12-member Board of Regents who are discussions happening in another room down the hall that are elected by this legislature and represent our state's 8 districts and our at-large seats. I, of course, serve as the president of the University of Minnesota system and also as the leader of the flagship Twin Cities campus, with chancellors representing the other campuses in the system. And I have a tremendous group of colleague chancellors in Crookston, Duluth, Morrison, Rochester, who serve those communities with great pride, in combination with our extension offices around the state, allowing us to touch and serve literally every corner of the state of Minnesota. The structure of our university system allows us to work strategically and efficiently in support of our goals, in support of our service. And you see this reflected in our strategic plan, Impact 2025, which is our first system-wide strategic plan. Members of the committee, this is a world-class institution, but very much grounded to and committed to our sense of place. And our strategic plan endeavors to reflect that, very much reflecting your feedback as we were going through the preparation process. The plan is inspired by the state of Minnesota, but commits to world-class levels of return in our research, teaching, and service. And we're very delighted with the progress under that plan and what it's meant for the state of Minnesota, for our students, for our faculty and our staff, and for the other communities that we serve. It represents our priorities and our needs and the choices we make, such as how we're setting up a budget framework, how we're reducing administrative overhead, how we're working to keep Minnesota's land-grant research university affordable and accessible for all Minnesotans. So at the core of MPACT 2025 are our commitments, and they are, as you might imagine, at the cornerstone, a commitment to student success, like this past fall, where the University of Minnesota system enrolled the largest class of Minnesota high school graduates as freshmen that we've ever enrolled. It's our second largest cohort at the Twin Cities in half a century. Last year was the largest cohort that actually pleasantly surprised us by exceeding our goal, and so we were able to taper this year so that we could provide the best possible service to those students. We have a record high graduation rate for our four-year graduation rate. We are also committed to discovery, innovation, and impact. The university crossed $1 billion in federal funding 2 years ago, which is a record, of course, and put us in the company of the top 10 research universities in the country. We were able to sustain that success 2 years in a row. Those dollars mean that we're engaged in the discovery that Minnesota needs around treatments and cures and solutions, and those dollars also result in economic development and jobs. As a result of that support for our research, we've had record years in startup productivity and record years in patents, which create a very applied measure for how discovery and innovation is creating economic development and jobs, research opportunities, and learning opportunities. And we were elevated into the top 25 public research universities in the country last year. We were delighted by that progress and how that serves as a benchmark for how the rest of the country sees what we're doing. And then one of the happiest things that's happened since the last time we've been here is that in partnership with a lot of people, we were able to attract the 2026 USA Special Olympics to this community, which I can tell you because I had the distinct honor of escorting our 2022 athletes onto the field when Orlando was hosting, is one of the most magically happy ways for our community to both serve, demonstrate its commitment to equity, and be joyful in something that is just one of the purest, happiest moments that I ever had a chance to participate in. We're also very committed, in many cases in partnership with Minnesota State, to equity and to our commitment to being a welcoming community. This past fall, the University of Minnesota system enrolled its most diverse class on record. We were ranked as one of America's best employers for diversity, and we have continued the elevation of our partnership with Minnesota's 11 tribal nations, including some historic engagement with the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council. This has resulted overall in an increase in the survey response of our Twin Cities students who describe their sense of belonging as up 10 percentage points year over year. So there's still work to do in this space, obviously, but we're very pleased with the progress, and it only inspires us to deepen our commitment further. And then our strategic plan, last but not least, offers a commitment to our fiscal stewardship. So you've heard us present before about our PEAK initiative. PEAK is an acronym for Positioned for Excellence and Knowledge, and we've said everything has to have an acronym or people won't remember that we're doing it. But this is an initiative that we've undertaken at our own expense to reduce our administrative overhead in new ways so that we can really think about how the back room can be as efficient as possible while providing the highest quality service to our faculty and staff as possible, the best career opportunities for our staff in particular as possible, allowing us to invest in the academic side of the house in a strategic way, in the right programs, in the right research and discovery, in the right student services that our colleagues from Minnesota State described so eloquently that have become front and center in the overall student experience. It's allowed us to do things like reduce student debt. We are well below the national average on student debt. We are trending down on student debt, and over 40% of our students graduate with no debt at all. And finally, MPACT 2025 continues with our commitment to what we call Mintersections, which is our focus on what it means to be the University of Minnesota and what it is uniquely that the state of Minnesota calls for in commitments around discovery, teaching, and service, where the university has particular strengths. Mintersections currently focuses on healthcare, and we'll talk about that in pretty fair detail, I imagine, before the day is out, sustainability, and then in agri-food. And this has led to the launch of programs like Next Gen Ag and Next Gen Med, which is a partnership with a proprietary Google technology platform and with different employers, including the Mayo Clinic and CHS, that has students leveraging technology, which we learned to embrace in unexpected ways in these last few years, to be able to graduate with their undergraduate bachelor's degree in as short as 2.5 years with 2.5 years of work experience. It builds upon incredibly important programs like PSEO, which we're also very proud to sponsor students within in order to allow students to graduate as quickly and productively as possible. That's the best way to keep their costs down, is to get them the education that they seek and get them into the workforce in the way in which they choose. Around sustainability, we aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals so that we could have a benchmark, although our commitment is to bring those development goals into each and every individual community, which has been a really fun project. We were ranked under those goals recently. We're number 5 in the US and 16 in the world for our work relating to combating hunger, which, again, my colleagues from Minnesota State described as critically important, and we couldn't agree more. We're ranked number 2 in the US for our work related to promoting good health and well-being amongst the communities that we serve. And we are obviously very focused on healthcare. I'm sure you all have been aware of the work that we've been doing long-term, but today we did a press conference for our MPACT Healthcare Innovation Vision, which is a vision rooted in the university's autonomy in controlling our healthcare facilities and how we train clinicians and how we do research into treatment and cures and med tech industry that is critically important to our community. So we're really proud of how MPACT 2025 has served as the architecture for the service that we do, for the way in which we serve our students, for the way in which we support our faculty and staff. And we're grateful to all of you because your input and consultation as that plan was developed was critical to its design and now success. I'm really glad to also be able to talk to you about the results that we've had on behalf of our university's family. I look forward to addressing your questions on that, how we serve our students and how we serve the state of Minnesota and how we see ourselves as a part of the state's future. But at this time, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations, Myron Franz, to dive into some of the details of our ask.
Thank you, President Gable. Vice President Franz.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee and committee administrators and committee staff. Thank you for your time today. My name is Myron Franz. I'm the Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations for the University of Minnesota. I'd like to talk a little bit about the economic impact of the university. The University of Minnesota's breadth and depth of services have a really far reach, as we all know, that impacts virtually every person throughout the state and communities around the globe. Minnesota and its world-class research university are economic accelerators in the state of Minnesota. As a result, University of Minnesota contributes to the state of Minnesota having one of the fastest-growing state economies in the country. Now, the estimated annual economic impact of the University of Minnesota for the state of Minnesota is about $9 billion, and that's with a B. A recent study found that, first of all, the University of Minnesota has about 67,000 students and about 27,000 employees. But the University of Minnesota spending with state and local organizations, with university jobs, and with visitors contribute about $472 million to state and local government revenue throughout the state. For every dollar invested by the state in the University of Minnesota, $13.83 is generated in the state's economy. The University of Minnesota faculty and staff and students generate almost $131 million annually in community impact through donations and volunteer time to local nonprofits, something we're very proud of. From startups to Fortune 500s, as the President mentioned, the University of Minnesota has always played a critical role in Minnesota's stature as one of the best places for business. The university has extensive expertise in investing. We'll talk a little bit more about that with our Associate Vice President for Research. But sparking new businesses and growing startups, we have a track record like no other organization in the state of Minnesota. One of the things I want to mention that we're extremely proud of, this fall, the University of Minnesota was asked by deed and Governor Walz and Commissioner Grove to help with a program to inject $34.5 million in Minnesota's early-stage venture-backed businesses. The venture program is one of several programs made possible by nearly $100 million to the state that was secured to support small businesses throughout the state Small Business Credit Initiative. And so that participation by Governor Walz and Commissioner Grove has allowed us to be an instrumental part of providing that access to capital to venture and startup companies. At the University of Minnesota, we are treating patients, educating the next generation of care providers, and making discoveries that improve health care in Minnesota and around the world, frankly. With our legacy of innovation, we are driven to meet the diverse health needs of Minnesota and beyond. 70% of Minnesota's health professionals are trained at the University of Minnesota. Our graduates go on to better their communities, heal patients, develop life-changing treatments and cures. We have over 7,000 students enrolled in more than 60 health sciences degree programs. We treat over 1 million patients per year. Another economic driver that we don't always talk about, that people sometimes forget, are the student workers that we have on campuses. And I was one of those proud student workers back in my day. Yes, there was student workers even when I went to college, and I was one of those. But, you know, it provides such a great opportunity for students to, obviously, to help them defer the cost of the college, but also for hands-on, real-world application of skills, valuable training and work experience to develop transferable skills that are really helpful in a great career, and opportunities to network with and work with mentors. At the University of Minnesota, we are committed to attracting, educating, and graduating students who represent the diversity, talent, and workforce needs of the future. We are extremely proud of our fantastic students who are graduating at high rates and filling jobs with Minnesota's top employers. In fact, 93% of students from the 2021 class are either employed or continuing their education. 72% of graduates are employed with Minnesota companies in areas like healthcare, finance, accounting, teaching, data analytics, among others. Our students are filling the jobs of some of Minnesota's largest companies too, and staying in Minnesota, thank goodness, to do this work. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, the university's impact on the state's economy and workforce is really unparalleled. Every investment you make into this institution is an investment in the future of Minnesota. We look forward to working with you this session. And with that, I would, unless there are any questions at this time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have my colleague, Amy Kircher, the Associate Vice President of Research, talk about our growing economy and innovation and discovery. But that's your call, of course.
Thank you. We can go to Ms. Kircher
Great,
first.
thank
Thank
you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Amy Kircher. I'm an epidemiologist who's accomplished research in public health and national security, and as Myron shared, currently the Associate Vice President for Research. And I have the coolest job in the state. Every day I see colleagues solve global challenges and find solutions for our state in research. I get to engage our students and hear about their research and how that research is expanding their learning. I hang out in octopus labs. I get to watch our research become reality as I watch our experimental autonomous vehicle drive through campus. I travel across our state, visiting places like UMD's Natural Resource Research Institute in Duluth and on the range, and see how their industry partnerships are transforming the steel industry with more environmentally friendly iron reduction methods. So today, on behalf of our Vice President for Research, Shashank Priya, it's my great pleasure to share a little bit about our research enterprise. I know that you've been given handouts. I'll have some references to those numbers in those handouts. President Gabel gave you the bottom line up front, which is a pretty cool statement to say. The U is part of a $1 billion research club. To put that in perspective, we are one of only a group of 23 other universities in the U.S. that can say that. 60% of our external awards are from federal agencies, which through competitive awards successfully brings back resources to the state of Minnesota from the National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, and about a dozen other federal agencies. We continue to excel in funding to our medical and health-related colleges, which received 56% of our external awards last year, and we do significant research in engineering, biology, and basic sciences. And I'd be remiss not to share that we've seen significant research growth this year at UMD, the College of Food, Ag, and Natural Resource Sciences, and our College of Liberal Arts, all who grew their research awards by 50% in the past year. Now, as a proud Minnesota native, Glenwood, I'm extremely proud of the research that we do to help Minnesotans, and one example of that is at UMD, computer science professor Arshia Khan and her students who've programmed robots to provide support to the elderly. These robots meet unique needs of individual residents, elderly residents, including monitoring a patient's vitals. They could reminisce about the past and sometimes tell jokes. Recently, Monarch Healthcare Group provided over $1 million to pilot programs for these robots in their healthcare facilities. As Myron has shared, an essential element of our work is translating these innovations to the marketplace where they can best serve the public. UMN is nationally and globally recognized for our innovation and technology commercialization. As you heard President Gable say, we broke our own records this year. 241 patents issued and 22 startup companies created. UMN inventions have generated $241 million in the past 10 years. Now, a great example of that is Niron Magnetics. This is a company founded by my colleague Jinping Wang. Niron is commercializing high-performance, rare earth-free permanent magnets for use in electric cars and windmills. Recently, they received $17.5 million from the U.S. Department of Energy to scale up prototyping of these sustainable permanent magnets, and they're partnering with global manufacturers, including Volvo and Peerless Audio Equipment. Now, this group is currently completing a $20 million facility, 25,000 square foot. It's a pilot plant that's being built in Northeast Minneapolis. Now, at the U, we believe research is teaching, and we're able to provide our students unique opportunities that prepare them to be the next innovators of tomorrow by training them in methods of research and discovery. In a recent survey, 41% of the university's undergraduate students reported they've assisted faculty in conducting research, and we're well on our way to achieving 50% in our MPACT 2025 goal. One of my favorite things, and you can find it online if you look, is hearing about our undergraduate research during our spring and fall research symposiums. This fall, I was able to listen to Grace Kelberg present her work on caregiver mental health outcomes, and Wan Ying, who's exploring research for new technologies called Spintronics, a pretty awesome opportunity for our undergraduate students. Now, we're grateful to be in this particular ecosystem with industry partners who are interested in collaborating with the university. Our Corporate Engagement Center, which is a joint venture between our office and the university's foundation, works with industry who seek to partner on both basic and applied research, but also translate our innovations to the marketplace. In summary, we're currently setting our goals to expand our research portfolio, and this includes a few specific things. This year, we'll be hosting a 2030 workshop to define and prepare for the research that we'll do in 2030 to solve local and global challenges. We're enabling our faculty across the 5 campuses to partner with industry and with our national labs like Sandia to build interdisciplinary teams to solve problems. And we're building place-based innovation capacity, and by that I mean co-location of business and industry on or adjacent to our campus and facilities, and funding translation of university inventions through what we refer to as the Valley of Death, from research to the marketplace. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee for this opportunity. I will turn it over to my colleague, Julie Tonneson.
Thank you. Ms. Tonneson, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Julie Tonneson. I am the Vice President and Budget Director for the university, and I'm pleased to be here, Mr. Chair and committee members. I have been asked this afternoon to provide a brief summary of the university's budget and the role that the state appropriation plays in supporting our mission. And here I thought I had the coolest job in the world. Amy, we're going to have to fight about that a little bit. But the university's current annual budget of $4.2 billion is made up of a variety of restricted and unrestricted revenues that I think can best be summarized really in 3 categories. First is restricted funds. Fully 1/3 of our budget, or $1.4 billion right now, is from restricted sources. That means that we have to spend the dollars at the direction of the source. That includes things like the federal research grants that AVP Kircher was talking about, but it includes gifts, endowments, even the state special appropriations. A second category of funding in our budget is roughly $1.1 billion a year, or just over 25%, is related to things that I call miscellaneous sources. That would be things generated by departments in terms of educational sales, fees, royalties, clinical income from our veterinary school and our dentistry school and so forth. In addition to that, we have businesses that sell to students and the public in our bookstores, student housing and dining contracts, parking, and those types of operations. The revenues generated by all of that activity are used first and foremost to support the operating costs of those activities. And then the third category of resources is the very important combination of state O&M appropriation and tuition, which are really critical at $1.7 billion a year, or about 40% of our total budget. They are critical to supporting our mission activities. I want to spend just a couple of minutes describing some of the changes we've seen over time in these revenues. It's really no secret that the state appropriations used for operations remain a significant and important source of support for the university. Over time, however, the university's dependence on state appropriation versus tuition and other revenues has shifted. About 30 years ago, in 1990, of the state appropriation plus tuition total, 70% was appropriation and 30% was tuition. At that same time, the state appropriation was 39% of total university revenues, and the general fund portion alone was close to 7% of the state's general fund spending. In the intervening years, even though our appropriation in straight dollar terms remained strong, as a result of economic downturns and a shift in needs and priorities at the state level, the general fund state appropriation to the university has dropped from 7% of total state spending to 2.5%. And commensurate with this change, the other two metrics I just mentioned have shifted as well. The state appropriation tuition ratio has shifted from 70-30 to about 40-60. And the total state appropriation dropped from 39% of total university revenues to 17%. To cover our ever-increasing costs over time, without real gain in state funding, three things have happened. Tuition has gone up from 12% of total university revenues 30 years ago to 25% today. Second, we've become more dependent on those other revenues I mentioned that the institution generates. They moved from 49% of our total revenues to 58%. And in most of the last 20 years, we have annually implemented internal budget cut and reallocation exercises in order to balance our budgets. This is a process requiring all units to plan to stop spending current revenues on one thing in order to free up those resources to cover a higher priority need. In many of those years, the emphasis on the cut side of the equation was to reduce spending on administrative functions. Today, our internal goal is to maintain our administrative spending in the range of 10 to 11.6 of total expenditures. In recent years, it's dropped from that high of 11.6% in FY20 to 10.8% of our total spending last year. So with that for some context, let me very briefly outline our proposals for state support in the next biennium. We're requesting three impactful additions to our base O&M appropriation. The first is a proposed partnership. We're requesting a $45 million increase in each of the next 2 years for core mission support, as 50% of our projected annual inflationary cost increase of $90 million. The university will cover the remaining $45 million each year through continued internal spending cuts, relying a bit more on growth in other revenues. The second item we're requesting is $30 million recurring beginning in FY24 for a new Minnesota resident scholarship. These funds will be used to recruit Minnesota students to enroll in college, to remain in the state at any of our campuses, and then to retain them through to graduation. The multi-year awards will be offered to all resident students entering as freshmen at Crookston, Duluth, Morris, and Rochester, and to resident first-generation students entering as freshmen or transfer students at the Twin Cities campus. The final item we are requesting is $5 million beginning in FY24 for public safety improvements on all of our campuses. These funds will be used to supplement investments the university is making today and will allow us to address areas of need faster than we would be able to do on our own. The majority of the funds will be used for cameras, security equipment, and card access controls for building entrance, for the initial equipment, and then the ongoing maintenance and replacement program for these items, as well as the IT systems and the people that run the technology. It will also provide for increased security personnel, additional overtime shifts, K-9 unit, vehicle replacement programs, and so forth on the Twin Cities campus, things that are critical to ensuring public safety. That's just a very high introduction to our request, understanding that we will have further opportunity to delve into details on this in the future, and we look forward to that discussion. And now I will turn it back over, with your permission, to Senior Vice President Myron Franz to address our healthcare initiative.
Thank you, Vice President Franz.
Mr. Chair, before I do that, I do want to point out the 2023 points of pride that you have, one of your handouts. I think a lot of the points that President Gable mentioned are in there, and really a good source of information. Let me close our presentation today by talking about what we talked about this morning. It's pretty exciting news for us to be here today to talk about the announcement of our Impact Healthcare Innovation Vision. This morning, President Gable, Dr. Toller, Dean of the Medical School, and I presented this vision to the university and to our community. We believe that this vision will help ensure Minnesota's healthcare and health professions remain strong and leans into the university's mission of education, research, and innovation, and public service to continue to make Minnesota a leader in health to all Minnesotans. The Impact Healthcare Innovation Vision aligns closely with the university's system-wide strategic plan described by President Gable called Impact 2025. Excuse me. This covers our commitment to develop and embrace new and leading healthcare delivery models, continues our focus as a leading medical research university, and ensures that we continue to produce med tech and health science discoveries based on our research. There are 5 components to the Impact Healthcare Innovation Vision. First, the university will work to ensure that all Minnesotans have access to a top-tier, nation-leading academic health system. Our research, care, and teaching make a difference in Minnesota's lives, and we want to make sure that that access is available. Second, to achieve this objective, we must own, govern, and control the flagship healthcare facilities on our Twin Cities campus. They include the University of Minnesota Medical Center East and West Bank facilities, the Masonic Children's Hospital, and the Clinics and Surgery Center. They also could include other facilities essential to delivering our hospital and other services. As you may know, Fairview Health Services currently owns these facilities as part of the mHealth Fairview affiliation agreement. We are asking the state, and we'll be working with all of you, to come up with a plan to help support the shifting of those facilities to the university. Third, our commitment to clinical and other partnerships will continue. This is core to the university's public service mission. We will work with all healthcare providers in Minnesota, including Fairview Health Services or a combined Fairview and Sanford Health. This will ensure teaching, research, and innovation are provided to medical professionals and patients statewide. It's critical as part of our access that I mentioned earlier. And fourth, we're calling on the state of Minnesota to join us in a commitment to begin planning for a new state-of-the-art hospital on the East Bank of the Twin Cities campus. This hospital will be rooted in the discovery that has routinely positioned the University of Minnesota Medical School among the world's most innovative. It will also serve the Minnesota's needs for healthcare delivery, education, innovation, and discovery for the next century. And it advances care, wellness, and health in ways that only a hospital associated with a leading research university can provide. You may know that we've already begun purchases of land adjacent to the university now that we have in our possession for a location for the university hospital right next to the clinical and services, clinical and surgery center right off of Huron Avenue. And finally, given the age of our flagship hospitals, the East and West Bank hospitals and facilities, they cannot provide the platform we want for a world-class academic medical center. While the new hospital is under design and construction, we will seek legislative and community investment to bridge the present facilities to the future hospital. This investment will ensure the care so critical to the university's mission and the long-term health of Minnesotans. For 135 years, the medical school has had the honor and the responsibility to help improve Minnesotans' health. We do that in three ways. We educate our future physicians and scientists, we take care of patients, and we use science to better understand health problems and look for better treatments. As a medical school, we were ranked number 3 in primary care by U.S. News, and our family medicine department is number 2 in the nation. We are part of the foundation of this state, and that responsibility is core to who we are. This project, the Impact Healthcare Innovation, is designed to let us take on challenges in a new way. Here's the challenge, and here's why we need state support. Planning and construction for a new hospital will require, at a minimum, 5 years. We must begin now to assess community needs, plan for a great solution, and secure necessary public funding. We also acknowledge that we have a lot more work to do to build out the specifics behind this vision, including cost estimates and more detailed plans. Our team is working to complete this analysis. The Fairview and Sanford merger proposed prompts the need for a fuller discussion about how the state, university, and care providers can and should place the health of Minnesotans at the core of upcoming decisions. The university has and will continue to contribute fully to the discussions with the Attorney General and others who are raising concerns about the Fairview-Sanford merger proposal. We continue to be committed to the existing mHealth Fairview agreement and direction, but we must also ensure that we prioritize the best interests of Minnesotans and the university's mission in all that we do. This medical school, your medical school, is excited and energized by the opportunity to better fulfill our commitment to Minnesota and Minnesotans. This is just the beginning, and we look forward to more conversations with you all about the promise of the Impact Healthcare Innovation Vision. And Mr. Chair, that completes our presentation, I believe. Thank you.
Thank all four of you for the presentation. That will leave us with, I think, comments and questions from our members, and I'll begin if that's okay. And, my first question is for President Gable. So earlier today, my office staff met with students, workers, as well as faculty that were here to observe the RCAC process. And one of the concerns that they shared with us was that there's a lack of transparency with the university community and the university administration as the administrators craft the budget. And specifically, a couple of the items that they mentioned that was their concerns were around, I think, student pay as well as student support services. But they mentioned that these were their priorities, but they weren't able to advocate for it because they weren't able to engage in the process as well. So I guess my question is, as we are considering the university's request, can you tell us what your administration can do to ensure that there's more transparency in terms of how the budget request is formed and how everyone, all stakeholders, can be engaged and collaborate in crafting the recommendation so that it happens before it goes to the Board of Regents?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we meet regularly with student government leadership who represent the students as a whole through Student Senate, and then the student government leadership on each campus who come to us with their budget requests each year. We also have student representation on the Board of Regents who are very much at the table in the discussion around the development of the budget. The requests that the students have made, for example, over the past couple of years around their pay resulted after a lot of research and some budgetary work, largely by Ms. Tonneson, to increase the minimum to $15 an hour in order to reflect their demands and expectations that we agreed with, and also the competitive marketplace for talent, which is very real, that we respect and appreciate as a large employer with a lot of student workers, as my colleague previously described, and also committed to making sure that student working experience is a learning experience in addition to being an employment experience. We meet with all aspects of shared governance, the faculty, leadership, civil service, and P&A, and it's very much a part of our collective bargaining process to discuss the budget development. One of the changes that we've made in the last 4 years was we started introducing the draft iterations of the budget months earlier than we used to. It used to be until 3.5, 4 years ago that the budget came forward in June for board review and action in July, and that was the extent of the public access to the budget process. Now we start talking about the budget in January. Ms. Tonneson made her first presentation publicly in January, and then we have feedback consistently all of the time. I think our challenge, and I don't want to speak for the constituencies that you spoke with, but the sense that I have hearing from those constituents is that not everyone channels their requests up through the individuals who they've elected to represent them. It doesn't always work that way. We're a large, complex organization, and sometimes the different stakeholder groups want direct access. We prefer, because we're a large, complex organization, to consult directly with the representatives that the stakeholder groups have elected to represent them, either through collective bargaining or through shared governance for the entities that aren't labor represented. And that's how we try to sort of keep it organized, right, in order to move the process forward in a functional and efficient way. We probably do need to think about other ways to give platforms for that expression. If the frustration is bubbling up to the point that it's the issue that they brought before you today, which I must admit is a little bit of a surprise given the changes that we've made, then we need to rethink how we're doing that so that we can bridge that gap.
Thank you, President Gable. I guess my follow-up would be, is there any form of open public comments for folks on the draft proposal outside of the shared governance?
Yes, the budget review process has scheduled open comment as part of the Board of Regents schedule during the May.
Mr. Chair, President Gable, it's between the May or June review of the budget and approval. The board has a communicated public forum opportunity.
Thank you for the response. I think next we had Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I just mainly have some comments. First and foremost, I couldn't help but take a look at the sheet we were all provided, the University of Minnesota District Impact Fall 2020, which lists a few categories. And I'm proud to say that Senate District 57 is leading in number of students. So you can imagine that drives a lot of what I hear about from constituents, right? I'm a former school board member in Lakeville, which is the biggest city that represents District 57. And obviously, we send a lot of students to the U of M, as well as all the other institutions that are represented in this room. And as a result of that, I was happy to hear some of the 2023 points of pride that were listed, whether it's record high graduation rates, or the percentage of graduates who are enrolled that are Minnesota high school graduates. Something I hear from constituents is sometimes the competitiveness of getting accepted in some of our colleges or universities or schools here in the state of Minnesota. So I hope to see that trend continue. And last but not least, what really caught my eye, and I think there were even a few more metrics that were mentioned, but this one really caught my attention. 40% of undergraduates leaving with no debt. And I think you said it was trending downward. And so this is not a question to be answered here, but I'd love some follow-up information to hear what exactly you're doing that is impacting or leading to that. That's outstanding. So prioritizing our Minnesota resident students and then looking at affordability is something that's very, very important and critical to the folks in my district, who get our number one in students on that sheet. So, but again, in wrapping up, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank everybody who came here today to share with us about your organizations, the institutions you represent, the good work you're doing all across the state of Minnesota on behalf of what is our most important resource. Our students, our young folks, the future generations that will be up here at some point and be in your chairs at some point doing what you do. So thank you, and let's continue to do that good work.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. I think next we have Vice Chair Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I speak partially as an alum. It's your fault that I'm here, in a sense. I moved here to do a PhD at the U. It was the top program in the country for what I do, and for some reason they let me in. They're not the top anymore, and then I won't explain that, but my presence had nothing to do with that, I don't think. But I speak as someone who cares a great deal about this institution. You broke my brain in a really cool way and changed my life and gave me a career and all kinds of wonderful things. I love the place. But we've had some controversies of late that make it difficult for me, again, not as a senator, but as an alum, to do the kind of support of the institution that I'd like to do. And one of those incidents is the well-publicized, deeply racist comments by Regent Swigum last October. And I just imagine in my head what it would feel like to be a student and have a regent say something that I could interpret as being hateful of my existence at that institution. And I wonder, what's the right way to respond to a moment like that? I understand you're in a very difficult position with things like this, and I don't mean to be judgmental in any way, but simply to express my care. And that's that those students probably were looking for a more decisive and unequivocal response in that moment. And again, I say this not in judgment, but just in concern. What can we do to help us help you when sometimes stuff happens and it undermines the credibility of the institution in some ways? So I guess that's more of a comment than a question, but I hope you appreciate the spirit in which it's given.
Mr. Chair, Senator Putnam.
President Gable.
Thank you. Yes, we very much receive the spirit in which your comment is offered. I wish I could give attribution to the person who actually said this, so forgive me for not recalling, but there is a proverb, I believe is a Chinese proverb, that says, "May you live in interesting times." And it is both a blessing and a curse in the sense that our access to information, the extent to which what we do as organizations, whether it's on campus, what you all do as you seek election and then serve in your roles, is visible, is available in ways that never existed before. What that means for all of us as individuals and as communities and on behalf of the communities that we serve is that sometimes our mistakes are more visible than they ever were before. The impact of our decisions affects people in ways that they never have before. Misunderstandings or actual misrepresentations sometimes take on life in ways that they never did before. And we see the consequences of that socially. The polarization that it creates is certainly not limited to us in the higher education community, you all in the work that you do here or in the other aspects of your life. It's a global issue. And it has made some of the things that seemed utterly normal before, which I would include in normal the fact that people sometimes say things that they shouldn't say or decide things that people disagree with, much harder to manage, much more impactful, much more painful in many cases. This is something that my colleagues and I talk about extensively, and by colleagues in this case, I mean other presidents of universities, often public universities, trying to compare notes, trying to figure out best practices. Our mission is to create knowledge. And you know this as well or better than anyone else in this room. And that means pushing envelopes. It means creating situations that are sometimes uncomfortable. It means people disagree. Lots of disagreement, that's not new. But the impact of those things is so different today than it was before. And I think society as a whole, and we are not immune to this, are struggling with how to think about impact and recognize that there is impact, not limit or chill the free speech and expression of voice that goes into things that can sometimes create impact while protecting our communities from pain. And we don't always get it right. So I don't know how to answer the question. If I knew, we'd be doing it. But I very much appreciate the offer. I very much appreciate the idea that this is a shared responsibility And I am very open to your input and suggestion and partnership in how we might all get better as a community. And I thank you for the question.
Thank you, President Gable.
Senator Pano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Umu Verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I'm not leading in students, I am leading in faculty in District 66, which comes as no surprise. I am also a proud product of the University of Minnesota. I was a post-secondary enrollment option student in high school, and I have a few questions. One, just looking at these points of pride, and seeing that 1 out of 3 students are BIPOC students, I'm wondering if that tracks with the sort of 7 and 10 enrollment of Minnesota residents. So are roughly 70% of those students of color also Minnesota residents, or are there any disparities there?
Mr. Chair and Senator Verbatim, yes.
President Gable.
Thank you. I don't have the hard data in front of me, so anecdotally, and we'll certainly get back to you with the exact detail. Like most universities, our BIPOC students are in-state students. That's actually a national trend. There's a lot of upside to that. You know, we want to make sure we serve, in the sense that we want to serve Minnesota students writ large. There are also some interesting sort of social questions that we in higher ed are asking ourselves about that trend, because those 3 out of 10 students who aren't from Minnesota are likely to stay here when they graduate. And so if we want to be an attractor of diverse talent in partnership with Minnesota State and the private schools, then we need to be attracting diverse talent from out of state. And so we want to be both fully respectful and acknowledge the mission of each institution to serve its constituencies in the states in which they exist, while also wanting to bring diverse new talent to employers in the state of Minnesota. So we're working through that tension. I think it's a healthy tension. It's a good debate. It's a question we should be asking ourselves, that as we think about who those 3 out of 10 students are, or whatever the statistic is year over year, that we are very cognizant of our desire to diversify the new talent pool in the state for our employers.
Thank you, President. Senator Umu Verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can ask another question.
Of course.
And thank you, President. So we've heard a lot from students just throughout this session, the issue of college affordability, but we've also heard about just the skyrocketing cost of basic needs and housing and food and mental health care. And I'm wondering what you're doing at the University of Minnesota really to ensure that students have some of those wraparound services to meet those needs and make sure that they can show up to learn.
President Gable, I know it's tough, but please keep the response brief because we have one more question and we have to wrap up at 5.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank
I'll
you.
do my best.
Thank you.
I am a professor at heart, so being short of words is not my strength. Okay, so Senator, we can provide you a pretty detailed report, and we could provide it to the entire committee on what we're doing around basic needs. I do want to acknowledge our student government, who has taken this up as one of their priorities for this year around basic needs services and a basic needs strategy. But we have a wraparound approach to different areas of insecurity that has recently included the Universal Transit Pass. We also have a food pantry and a variety of other services, and recently announced a partnership with Shipt, which allows students to bring food to them, depending on whether that meets their needs better than their now free ability to get out of food deserts and acquire food. We've made a deep commitment on student mental health, and we partnered with Minnesota State on this. It's not an area of competition, that students and humans ages 18 to 24 are in deep mental health crisis, national problem. And if we're going to serve students, then we need to serve their well-being, and we have the President's Initiative on Student Mental Health, which has Minnesota State representation to provide the best services possible. But I'll get you some details on that, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, President Gable. Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Gable, thank you for being here. And I want, for the committee as well, I've been missing some of our meetings. We just wrapped up the last of the RCAC interviews for the Board of Regent candidates just before I walked in. One of the recurring themes that was brought up during the interviews by many members of the RCAC was this idea of a lack of accountability and a lack of public transparency as to how some of these things are coming forward, which I think creates some of this angst that we see and hear. And I know, like I said, there are many good things going on, but a lot of attention gets focused on the negative. And then the second piece of that was just a relationship that seems to be not where it used to be, not as good, a fracture between maybe the Board of Regents and the legislature, and maybe just the administration and the legislature as well. And Congressman Luther made a great comment during his interview that, you know, one of the methods that the legislature has is the power of the purse string. And we hear many times that the U is an autonomous because of their land grant, but they come and request money from the state. So I guess what I'm asking is, can we expect and try to work with you to build that relationship so that we understand each other better? And is there a way that you can work on that transparency so the legislature and the public have a better understanding of what is going on and we don't just hear a final decision?
President Gable.
Mr. Chair and Senator Rarick, I mean, absolutely. There have been a lot of steps that we've undertaken as an administration to try to increase accountability and transparency, largely through the measures on the strategic plan that we make publicly available, changes in how we've done Board of Regents agenda setting, longer periods of time that some of the hottest issues like budget are publicly available for conversation and review. But I mean, apropos to Senator Putnam's questions, times have changed. We are not always the fastest at pivoting when times change. And I think one of the biggest changes that has happened socially that very much has an impact on, I think, what all of us do, but certainly in what you're describing in our partnership together, is that information just moves a lot faster and people's expectations around access to that information is moving faster. And I agree with you. I think we really need to think about how to be more transparent. We feel very transparent. We feel like we are making information widely available, but we also are listening to the fact that that's not how it's being received by all of our constituencies. And so, yes, I think that that's something we could and should work on together.
Thank you, President. And thank you all so much for your presentations today. That concludes our hearing for today. Our next hearing will be Tuesday, January 17th, and we will hear presentations from the Minnesota Private Colleges Council along with several faculty unions. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 17th, and this meeting is adjourned.